A promise from President Trump on the campaign trail now fulfilled, moving to declassify the remaining documents on John F. Kennedy's assassination, as well as those for his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. Kennedy's assassination, of course, in 1963 shocked the nation. Shot and killed in the back of a convertible while crowds of people gathered in Dallas to catch a glimpse of the president. It was determined that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, opening fire from the 6th floor of a nearby building. But in March of 1975, more than a decade later, NewsNation correspondent-at-large Geraldo Rivera put that belief into question. It was on his show, Good Night America, that the iconic Zapruder film was shown to the public for the first time, changing the perception of Kennedy's killing forever.
I'm telling you right straight out that if you are at all sensitive, if you're at all queasy, then don't watch this film. Just put on the late night movie because this is very heavy. It's the film shot by the Dallas dress manufacturer Abraham Zapruder, and it's the execution of President Kennedy.
And you were looking at a single still from that film, the moment the president was shot. These images fueling multiple conspiracy theories still today, many believing that Oswald could not have acted alone. And NewsNation's correspondent-at-large Geraldo Rivera joining us live for more on this. Geraldo, I always appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Natasha, it's my pleasure. You have an excellent program.
Thank you. And Geraldo, what do you believe that Zapruder film exposed, and what do you believe happened that day?
Well, I know that it opened up a kind of a hornet's nest of conspiracy theorists. People were very dissatisfied with the way President Kennedy was killed, the official version of his assassination. It seems so when you compare this, Lee Harvey Oswald, this nobody, this old communist who was whatever his reasoning was, certainly not up to the majesty of the 35th president, the young and gracious John Kennedy, this beautiful man who went to Dallas on a campaign stop, drove through Dealey Plaza with his wife, the lovely Jacqueline Kennedy, sitting next to him, and he was shot and killed. The conspiracy theory started almost from the moment, it was evident that the president's wounds were fatal. And I don't think that there is any more certainty today, despite the fact that 99% of these documents have already been released. But I don't think people would be satisfied unless I don't think people would be satisfied, period. People are so emotional about it, so invested in their own theories now. I don't think that we'll ever get a satisfactory conclusion.
Yeah, you have poured over this information in an incredible way. And so I'm interested, is there a theory in particular that really strikes you that has a lot of merit that deserves further investigation?
What a great question. I did, with my staff, we really did go through the entire Warren Commission file on this. We interviewed everyone that was living, that was still around, that we could find, including Lee Harvey Oswald's widow. We asked everybody, and we investigated every angle: the CIA, the Italian mafia, Cuba. There were so many different theories. And then when Jack Ruby kills him, this ignominious assassin, this awful person, this nobody, Jack Ruby kills him for very sketchy reasons shortly after his arrest. Then people started saying, well, it does seem like a cover-up. And then I tell you, when I released that footage, and I know there's a tremendous sensitivity in showing the footage, it's showing up now on various streaming services, Twitter and so forth. It's a very, very shocking video. I mean, it shows the president being hit twice from behind, but there is one point during after he has an initial forward movement of his head from one of the back shots, where his head slings back like this, where his head goes all the way back. And you wonder, how could his head be going that way when that's the way the bullet came? It should have pushed his head forward, bang, boof. Why did it go, bang like that? And then, over the years, I've gone through with forensic pathologists and Dr. Cyril Wecht and many other prominent people. We've gone through everything frame by frame of this footage, all of those volumes that I mentioned on the Warren Commission, and we still come to the same conclusion. The fact that Lee Harvey Oswald and Lee Harvey Oswald alone committed this act is now the most likely scenario. Why do I say that? This happened back in 1963, and we're still talking about it. We still have a mystery. No one has come forward. There's not been any real revelation, no smoking gun. So you asked me what my favorite theory. It's not my favorite. It's my least favorite, but it's one that I think that most people will inevitably come to.
Was there any good explanation? Was there any good explanation for that recoil moment that you described?
Physiological, yes, Natasha. They described the human body action-reaction, the neurological. It was an understandable and practical explanation, if unsatisfactory.
Okay. And is there anything that you are watching for in particular with these last 3,000 files that will be released? What will you be looking for?
I mentioned that Lee Harvey Oswald was a communist. And even though he was a Marine, he was a communist later. He went to Moscow, and part of the investigation was in Moscow. Did he have anything to do with the Soviet government? What was he there for? It turns out that his mother-in-law was there. As I recall, I don't recall that exactly, but I think that I would like to know more about what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald in Russia. Did Lee Harvey Oswald have any real connection that we can discern from the KGB, for example, the now non-existent, ruthless secret police of the Soviet era? I'd like to know very much what he did in Russia. I think that if there are any unanswered questions, to me, it is there that I would direct my attention. Was he, under the control of a KGB operator? Was he being used to commit this crime at that time in the height of the Cold War? I would like to know about Russia, Natasha.
Yeah, with everything that you've looked at, what is the likelihood that either Cuba or Russia had anything directly to do with this?
Well, remember, it's almost it's like a dark humor when you recall the 2016 presidential race when President Trump, then candidate Trump, accused Ted Cruz's father of being one of the Cuban assassins or part of the Cuban conspiracy. It later turned out that the National Enquirer doctored the photos of Ted Cruz's dad. The poor guy got implicated in this most notorious murder maybe in the 20th century. That's the weapon it's the exact same weapon as Lee Harvey Oswald used for the assassination.
Wow.
They've asked me, this whole program is in the Dealey Plaza Museum, the museum to the assassination. And so, if you're really interested in delving deeper, well, these documents that the president is about to declassify, I think they will maybe quiet some of the controversy, but they may even open more questions. My main answer, my bottom line is, this is going to be a very, very unsatisfactory conclusion to this endeavor, although I applaud it. Why? Because everyone's got a theory. No one can believe that this couple endured that America lost this wonderful person. Would we have gone to Vietnam the way we did? Would there have been the civil rights demonstrations that there were? There's so many. If John Kennedy had lived, all of the alternative histories, you can imagine how profound this is. That's why I don't think anybody, or the diehards, will ever be satisfied that there's an explanation.
Yeah, and not only that, but everything that's come out over what Jackie endured, not only that day, but in the subsequent days as well. There is so much to unpack there. Geraldo, I do want to ask, the FBI and the CIA fought the release of these files last time, and they succeeded. Why do you think they didn't want these to be released?
Well, I mentioned Moscow. I'm sure that there are CIA operatives involved. That in this investigation, I'm sure that they were secret assets used by Washington to find out what Oswald did in Moscow. I'm positive that there are names of agents, operatives in the field, or at least were in the field in 1963, the revelation of which could have caused them tremendous harm, if arrest or even assassination themselves. So I think that is that kind of sensitivity. And also operating techniques. What did they bug? Did they bug the Russian consulate in Dallas? Did they bug the KGB offices in Moscow? You know, that kind of secret agent stuff that they don't want revealed. And I think that that's what they were trying to prevent. And Trump is saying now, enough, forget about it. It's long ago. We need to know. And the other thing that's happened, of course, is his friendship with Robert Kennedy, RFK Jr.
Geraldo, I regret that we are out of time because I could talk to you about this just personally for so long. You are the person we wanted to speak to about this. As always, appreciate you so much, Geraldo Rivera. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.